Hey guys, this is Zach with 8020 Media, here today with a comparison video on the BMW N55 versus B58 engines. So right off the bat, both of these BMW engines are 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged direct injected engines, and both of them use BMW's dual vanos or variable valve timing, as well as BMW's Valvetronic system, which is their variable valve lift. Quite a few similarities with these two engines. The N55 was predominantly manufactured from 2011 to 2015. It did live on for a few years after that, but again, those were the primary years. And then in 2016, the BMW B58 engine started taking over and replacing the N55. The B58 is still in production today. However, BMW has made a couple technical updates to the B58. So the newest versions from 2020 and up are known as the B58 TU and have a couple notable changes, but that could be a video of its own. Quite a few changes to jump into. So we'll save that for a later date. A couple highlights here, a couple major differences between the BMW N55 and BMW B58 engine are that the B58 uses a closed deck block, whereas the N55 has an open deck block, just like its older N54 sibling. So the closed deck block is a great upgrade for anyone looking to really push these engines to the extreme and make 600-700 plus wheel horsepower. Other than that, the change to the closed deck block isn't really too important for this comparison. But if you're looking to make big power numbers, then the closed deck block on the newer B58 engine is certainly an advantage. Additionally, the B58 sees a higher 11.0 to 1 compression ratio. That's up from a 10.2 to 1 compression ratio in the N55 engine. The B58 also uses a longer stroke and a thinner bore for the cylinders. It has slightly larger displacement coming in at 2,998 cc's versus 2,979 cc for the N55, so they both still round up to 3 liters and are both considered 3-liter engines, but it is a slight displacement advantage to the newest BMW B58 engine. On top of that, the B58 moved from an air-to-air front mount intercooler to an air-to-water intercooler, so certainly a great update, and that air-to-water intercooler is very efficient and effective on the B58, so great update on that one. One other additional note, the B58 and N55 both have forged rods. However, the B58 also receives a forged steel crankshaft, whereas the N55 just had a standard cast crankshaft. Jumping right into mods and tuning potential for these two engines, the N55 is a little bit weird because the previous N54 engine was more capable than the N55. BMW took a little bit of a step back when it came to tuning and aftermarket performance with the N55, and then kind of ramp things back up with the B58. So the B58 is the more capable engine. Looking at basic bolt-on mods, tune, intake, downpipes, intercooler, and then maybe a little E85 blend. The N55 will cap out at about 380 to 425 wheel horsepower, whereas the B58 is capable of anywhere from about 440 to 500 wheel horsepower. Decent advantage to the B58 there. And that advantage holds true as you continue modding and push things further and further with these two engines. The N55 has a much harder time getting to 650, 700 plus wheel horsepower, whereas the B58 has a pretty easy time achieving those numbers. And another advantage, the B58 is a stronger engine with that forged crankshaft and the closed deck block. So looking at the upper limits, always hard to put an exact number on engines. The N55 is generally safe up to about 550 to 600 wheel horsepower, whereas the B58 is a little more capable and should be a little safer up to about 650, 700 wheel horsepower. A little bit stronger of an engine, certainly an advantage for the B58 there. And that advantage also carries into N55 versus B58 reliability. The B58 is the much more reliable engine out of the two. So the N55 was at least an upgrade reliability-wise over the older N54 engines. BMW figured out a lot of the issues with the high-pressure fuel pump, the piezoelectric injectors with the N55. BMW moved back to a solenoid style direct injector, which has been much more reliable on the N55 compared to those piezoelectric ones on the N54. And the N55 single turbo is a little more reliable than the twin turbo setup on the older N54s. So a couple good updates for the N55 reliability wise from the previous generation N54. But compared to the B58, the N55 still has a lot more problems, and they all seem to be a lot more common. Oil leaks, coolant leaks, Vanos solenoids. The N55 is much like the N54 in the sense that anything outside of the engine tends to be problematic at some point in time. Again, except for a couple of those items that were fixed, things like the high pressure fuel pump, injectors, turbochargers, but a lot of the rest of it can be pretty problematic on the N55. The B58, on the other hand, doesn't have many common problems so far. It is still a newer engine, so time will tell if things get worse moving forward, or if they become much less reliable when the B58 hits 8, 10, 12 years old. But for now, the B58 is certainly the more reliable engine, and the age here too is a factor. Just having something that's a few years newer, less mileage is bound to be a little bit more reliable, at least in the shorter term. Advantage to the B58, but again, probably will take another 4 to 6 years to really see how things shake out with the B58 when some of these start hitting that 10-year mark and start surpassing 120, 150,000 miles. Moving on to price, this is finally an area where the older N55 has a clear advantage. Looking at most of the 2011 to 2015 models, you can find N55s roughly in the $10,000 to $20,000 ballpark, maybe a little over $20,000 if you find some super clean 2015 model with low mileage. But for the most part, they'll probably fall somewhere right around $15,000 for most N55 models. The B58, on the other hand, the cheapest entry point is going to be about $22,000 up to $30,000 plus, and obviously even $50,000, $60,000 plus if you're looking at a brand new 2023 model with the B58 in it. But kind of keeping things similar year-wise, if you look at something like a 2016, 2017 B58, you'll be paying somewhere in the low, mid, maybe even upper 20s, depending on history and mileage, all of that stuff. Advantage to the N55, even though it is a little less reliable. If you're considering either of these cars, technically you could pick up an N55, put a couple $1,000s into preventative maintenance, fixing things up, even have a little bit of money left over for modifications and upgrades, and still end up out the door cheaper than what you'd be paying for a B58. A little bit of an advantage to the N55, but again, if you're really looking for a more reliable and more performance-oriented engine, then the B58 is the clear choice here in our opinion. As a summary, it's the more capable engine when it comes to tuning and aftermarket mods. It's also has more power and is more capable straight out of the factory. It's more reliable. It's the newer engine. It's stronger internally. So really the main advantage to the N55 is the fact that it's cheaper. And if you're on a tight budget, the N55 might be the better buy. But ultimately the B58 is the more capable, more reliable engine here, and something that is certainly shaping up to be a very impressive and capable engine. So we'll see how that all unfolds moving forward here, if that continues and the B58 maintains its strong reliability and capability when it comes to tuning and mods and handling big power numbers. That sums it up for our video here today. If you guys appreciated the content, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and check out the description below for more awesome content on the N55 and B58. Thanks, guys.